Zephirah's Adventure Podcast, Episode 8 for June 27th, 2018. In this episode, a community spotlight featuring Ringmaster Kevin and Navox, special co-host Eric, Hailstorm, and Feature of the Week, YouTube Special Edition. Greetings. So this week will be a little different as far as the community spotlights and how the show will be segmented. We're going to be doing the usual feature of the week and the Your Wow soundtrack segment. The new part that we're calling The Adventure is a more conversational piece about gaming in general, which can include Warcraft, but it's not exclusively featured. Also this week, the adventure is about self-improvement and video games, and we're going to pull in Eric for the conversation. And we're also going to have some WoW related news. This week also, we're going to be joined by Ringmaster Kevin for a podcast edition of the Community Spotlights. Also, our illustrious Fury Warrior of Convert to Raid, Navox, will have a written-based Community Spotlight on the blog for June 30th. I would like to continue to do these Community Spotlights in an audio format as long as time permits. Of course, we also need participation, so if you are ever interested in participating in any form in the podcast, please feel free to reach out. I don't bite. All you need to do is tweet me or join the blog's Discord. Feature of the week, YouTube channels. I wanted to start off by saying some WoW-related channels that I absolutely love. Everyone knows of Taliesin and Evitel. They're great. I love them. Keep up the good work, guys. But I also love Bellular and Mad Season and Hazel and Hero and Soul. And definitely, you'll hear later that Ringmaster Kevin mentions even some of these. But not all of them are WoW-related. I definitely also love Geek and Sundry, The Nerdist, and It's Okay to Be Smart. It's a short for PBS. Now, this list is going to be part of the post on Friday, June 29th. Links are going to be in that post and in the show notes for this week. So if you haven't seen any of these guys on YouTube, definitely visit their channels. They are awesome. Soundtrack Part 8, Hailstorm. Hailstorm is a rock band from Pennsylvania. And by the way, I'm pausing here for a second because, hello, if any of you know me or read the blog in any sort of capacity, you know that I'm from the greater Pittsburgh area in Pennsylvania, so I'm very proud that they are from my state. The band consists of lead vocalist and guitarist Lizzie Hale, her brother, drummer and percussionist RJ Hale, guitarist Joe, and bassist Josh Smith. This past February, the band announced that they will be working on their fourth studio album, and in May they had announced announced that the title and the release date for the album, so Vicious, will be released on July 27th, 2018, with the first single being titled Uncomfortable, which I absolutely love the single. And how I came about learning of Hailstorm, I was actually raiding one raid night. The topic of the conversation happened to land on music, and my raid leader said, you need to listen to this. You're gonna love them, Zeph. So Hailstorm's discography at that point was hitting my ears from our break time until the end of the night. And apparently I loved it thoroughly enough and enjoyed them ever since. So definitely check out the new single. If you like it, buy the album. Don't steal their music, kids. That's wrong. Pay them. And thank you very much for your music, Hailstorm. I really appreciate it. And, that adventure musically has been wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome to The Adventure, a new segment on Zephirah's Adventure, where we will discuss video games and self-improvement. My name is Everett Weixel, and I'm new here, new to podcasting in general, actually. But I am, of course, joined by Zephirah.
Hi! Sort of strange not starting out with me, huh?
Well, I wouldn't know because I haven't been here before, but yes.
Well, welcome everybody to the segment. It's going to be awesome, like normal. But I wanted to have Everett on to sort of test this out. This is going to be something new and different and fun, and hopefully I can improve as a podcaster. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm excited. And again, thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. So to sort of dive into the topic a little bit, we actually met via Discord, starting off with a conversation about Dungeons and Dragons. And yes. I actually play Zephirah in The Secrets of Talendor, which she's a halfling wizard, short, cute, and think that she has a thing for the barkeep, which...
And baggage. She has some baggage.
A lot of it. And a lot of it bigger than her. Most things are bigger than her because halfling.
Right. If she went on an airplane, she would go in the overhead and her baggage would go on the seat.
Absolutely. And let me remind you, everybody, it would be holographic purple, glitter everywhere, absolute mess to clean off the carpet. But at least it would be pretty.
That does sound pretty.
So I guess my first question, because we're talking about gaming and self-improvement, a lot of people don't associate D&D being, the video aspect of it. Like, we don't connect as big as we do with, like, Warcraft or StarCraft, or put whatever game in here now.
Right. I guess Dungeons and Dragons is technically not a video game. I mean, there are definitely lots of video game versions of it now, but it still falls into gaming, which I think... Obviously, there's a lot of differences, but there are a lot of similarities. If you take Dungeons & Dragons and World of Warcraft and even games like ping pong or football or what have you, they all kind of have the same essential element.
And the one thing that it does do is the element of distraction and pull yourself out of that and be something fun and that can be life lessons that can be discovered in that. So, in story and learning how to tell a story efficiently and gather information and learn that way. So I know that I'm sort of falling into the community spotlight end of this, but how has Dungeons and Dragons and gaming helped you over the years?
Well, It's kind of a long story. I've actually had this idea since I think about 12 or 13. This idea of gaming and self-improvement and how they go together. It's something a lot of people wouldn't think of. Like video games and self-improvement don't seem to be connected at all, but I've always seen them as very connected. Um, yeah, just the way we play games and the way within a game we're encouraged to pursue certain goals and take steps and solve problems. That's all the same exact stuff that you do when you're trying to improve yourself. Um, so basically, I had this experience that I played a lot of video games and I've read a lot of self improvement books, and I kind of see the same steps in each of them. So when you ask how specifically video games have improved my life, I would say a big one is actually fitness and health and physical activity. I'm probably like a lot of nerds can relate to this. When I was a kid, I wasn't always the strongest or the most athletic. But you would always be playing fantasy games, or if you were playing Dungeons and Dragons or World of Warcraft or whatever, you're usually playing this big, buff, strong hero. And for a lot of people, it was kind of an escapism, like, oh, I'll pretend I am this person so I don't have to worry about my health in real life. For me, I was always like, oh, well, I want to be like this person. What are the steps I can take to be like this person? So I started running, I started going to the gym, things like that.
And I'm sort of going to be Warcraft specific here on my end. On my blog a little bit ago, there was a set of goals that I set for myself to play each class for next expansion and have it be both Horde and Alliance. And then the other thing that I really like to do is to catch battle pets. And I'm a collector of all the things. And how I associate battle pets into fitness is Pokemon Go, because that's sort of in the same vein. Like, I am no skinny mini. Like, I'm not, so, and to get out and to have fun and to have that sort of idea of, hey, let's go play with some pets. Let's go get a Pikachu. Let's go, and plus the love of animals generally, I think helps that. That's how I connect it all. So that's Warcraft specific, but hey, it's fun.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I know a lot of people who think they're opposed to the idea of exercise or getting in shape, but they're not actually opposed to exercise. They just haven't found a way to make it fun or meaningful to them. Like you were saying, as soon as you were like, oh, I'm going to be going and catching some Pokemon in Pokemon Go, you're not seeing it as exercise, you're just seeing it as something fun.
Right. The other thing too, that I know that I recently did that I sort of am going to connect back to Warcraft is that monthly we have something called the Dark Moon Fair happen. And I'm sort of happy that Remaster Kevin is in this episode because he hosts and has been hosting the Dark Moon Herald. So that's a lot of fun, and that's going out. That's a social thing that gets everybody together in game. And there was a function that I went to last weekend, and it was a carnival at a church. So that's the same sort of idea, same sort of feel. Like, I got up and went and had some fun for a few hours away from the computer. But then, here soon, the Dark Moon Fair will be back, and it's going to bring back a good memory, and it's going to engage my brain and say, hey, this was fun. Do you remember that time? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Learning by association.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that was something that got you to actually get up from your computer and go out and do something. It's ironic because my whole thing, and I write my blog about this too, is basically how video games can be used as a vehicle for self-improvement. But I feel like I spend a lot of my time saying basically play less video games. Not at all because I think video games are bad. Obviously, I love them. The thing is, though, you can't just be playing video games and thinking about these things. You actually have to, when you're inspired to do something by a video game, then you actually have to put down the video game and go and do it. So it kind of is a double-edged sword.
Right. And for those of us that do not play Warcraft specifically, or for the listeners anyhow, there is the loading screens that say, hey, we love that you play Warcraft. We appreciate you and thank you. But remember, kids, this is not the only world that you live in. Go out, have fun. Like, play our games sparingly, but thank you for playing. Like, we appreciate it.
Yeah, I always love seeing those screens.
So the one thing that I know that we do, or I do on a weekly basis, is I raid. My team is the Rubber Chicken Coalition of Convert to Raid, and I was with them for a little over a year now. So a lot of those bosses, there's strategies involved, and sometimes you have to adjust those things. So I know that life sometimes gives you a situation where you're like, okay, I need to figure this out. And you may need to come up with a strategy, business plan, write a story out, give information when needed. So that's the other thing that I'm sort of learning in playing Warcraft and other games.
Yeah, video games are definitely great for teaching you to fail, which sounds counterintuitive. It's like no one thinks, oh, I want to learn how to fail, but actually is really important. Because if you're ever going to do anything meaningful or important or be successful, obviously you're going to fail a lot along the way. So when you play a video game, when you're trying to beat a really hard boss, you're like, okay, I'm going to fail a bunch. I'm going to have to change my strategy. And in the end, I win, and it feels great. And I'm glad that it was a challenge and I overcame it. So you transfer that to your real life, and you're like, okay, it's okay if I struggle or my career doesn't always want to go the way I want it to or whatever, because you know that you're learning and growing, and eventually you will overcome this challenge, and you'll be glad that you did.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now that we have in Warcraft specifically is the Mage Towers, which recently went live until other 8.0 are live. I don't think Blizzard said either way right yet, but that's a challenge, and there's some people that I realize that haven't completed those yet. I know I haven't, but I think it's a cool way to say, hey, like, this is a challenge. How are you going through that? What are you doing?
Yeah, still getting around to that, actually.
I haven't gotten Zephs yet, and I don't think that I sort of want to. It's a cool idea, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little off topic. I'm kind of in a weird place with Warcraft right now where, like, don't get me wrong, I am playing it a lot and loving it and having some of the most fun I've ever had in the game, but I'm not actually playing any end game or any max level, because actually my girlfriend recently joined the game, or more, I shanghaied her into playing the game, and so I'm actually leveling a new character with her. So yeah, Mage Tower rating or anything like that, it's been a while for me.
So, how are you enjoying the landscape changes, the leveling changes?
Oh, I love it. You mean the level scaling, or which parts?
Yeah, the level scaling, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. We actually started before that came in, and we're both the kind of players who, like, we want to read all of the quest text, we want to finish all the quest lines, we want to experience the entire story. But the game is made right now for easy leveling because they're assuming everyone's already played it and wants to level alts. So you actually level out of the zones before you finish all the quests. So we were basically at a point where we were always fighting monsters 5 levels lower than us because we just wanted to complete all the quests before we moved on from a zone. So now with the level scaling, it's so much of a better time.
Yeah, right now I'm leveling a few tunes. One of them being a rogue, and I don't get it.
Oh, really? That's what I'm leveling, actually.
Yeah, my head's not wrapping around the class. The other class that I don't seem to understand is Death Knights. I never really did. And not that I dislike the classes. I don't. I know it's a me thing. And I know that I have to go and find some guides and read through them and sort of see what other people are doing and how they get through it.
Yeah, that's actually a great segue, because I know I brought us way off topic, but that can actually bring it back around. Is that, again, that's something you can use in real life. You're trying something new, and it doesn't make sense to you, not even because of something hard. Like, if you had started out with a rogue or Death Knight, you'd probably understand it perfectly. It's because you've played so long, and I think Priest is your main class, right?
Yes. Started out as Discipline, and I initially started in, well, I say Kata, but I really started about 2 months before the Cataclysm expansion dropped. So I started with a Paladin and realized that style of class wasn't my favorite, and that I was looking for something different. And previous to that, I was playing a game called, which is also an MMO, RPG. It's called Fly for Fun. And in that game, I played something called a Bill Poster, which is sort of like a priest that healed, like a disciplined priest, but it also had fist weapons like a druid. So
Sounds cool.
it's very cool. And I haven't played it in a while. And the last time I tried, I realized there was a lot of visual changes that happened and a lot of sort of gameplay, how you press your buttons and move around changes. And I wasn't very, like, it didn't come as easy as it was years ago.
Right.
So I don't know if that's the game for me anymore, but I remember it teaching me a lot.
Right. But yeah, well, I was asking about the classes you were playing. Obviously, Rogue is probably one of the most different classes you can play from a priest or even a paladin. So you're probably feeling like, oh, I just want to go back to what's familiar, what I already know. But I'm sure learning to play Rogue is actually going to increase your skill as a player overall and make you understand the game at just a more basic, comprehensive level.
Yeah. And surprising, like, I surprised myself. I never leveled a Rogue past like 20. And she's the one that I've been leveling recently is up to 50. So that within itself, I'm happy.
Yeah, just that, like in game, like in real life, trying other things you're not comfortable with is obviously going to be a huge way to improve. A lot of people focus on just doing only what they're already comfortable with or already good at. Like for me, and I'm sure this is an example a lot of nerds would relate to, is like I was always smart and good at the intellectual stuff, but really bad at the physical stuff. So that's something I had to push myself to even try.
Yeah, and to level multiple characters too, the multitasking thing, and knowing where to find things for several cases. And it's just not just Warcraft, but other games too, like Hearthstone. That's a strategy game too, and each thing has its own sort of flavor.
Right.
The other thing that I just thought of too is that there's real life, sometimes work related things has time limits and senses of urgency on something. So these different levels or stages of things, you have to progress through, and you have to sort of things in a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the biggest thing is gaming, just teaches you to think about things in a different way, and it teaches you to think about and approach life in a different way. And it's something that it is super simple, but I feel like a lot of people never even think of this. Just like a game, you have certain objectives, and then you figure out how to complete them, and then you complete them and you move on to more difficult objectives. It's the exact same thing in real life. You figure out what you want, and then you figure out how to do it. And if it doesn't work, you try a different way. And then when you get it, you figure out, something more challenging, and then you figure out how to do that.
So something that I just throughout the course of the conversation, just thinking about it, throughout the years, there's been a lot of, good thing, bad thing about video games. Like, people play too much, or they don't know how to say no, or, they just do it to escape. What do we say to those people?
Well, the funny thing, and I kind of touched on this earlier, is a lot of times I actually kind of tend to agree with those people. It is a very case-by-case thing, but I mean, I know I play video games too much. I think a lot of people do. That's not something specific to gamers, though. Like, most people probably watch too much TV or eat too much junk food. So I think most of us could actually benefit from cutting down on our gaming, but I would disagree to say that gaming is bad entirely. Like I say, you can learn a lot from gaming and a lot that can really help your life, but for any of it to be useful, you do actually have to go out into real life and use what you've learned, which of course means limiting your gaming time since you can't be playing while you're doing that.
So there's a philosophy out in the world saying that video games is causing addictions. Do you agree with that or no? What's your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't say video games are causing addictions, but you can be addicted to video games. I mean, you can be addicted to most things. And I think video games are an easy thing to get addicted to because they're designed to give you a sense of reward whenever you do something. But it's also entirely possible, and many people do, to play video games and have them be a small entertaining part of your life but not get addicted and never risk addiction. So yeah, to the people who I guess freak out or get really worked up about, oh, everyone's going to get addicted to video games, I would say it's no more a danger than people getting addicted to TV or anything like that. But on the other hand, it is certainly possible, and we shouldn't fool ourselves by saying, no, video game addiction is not a real thing. If you're playing 10 hours a day, then you probably are addicted.
Yeah. And, the other thing is, too, is that there's another version of this, meaning that gambling addictions, too. If you have that issue, there is resources for you. And like you said, it's, I know myself. I can't speak for everybody else. So to me, playing 4 hours of Warcraft is okay every once in a while, but not 12 hours a day. Like that to me is too much, but I know where to cut myself off at.
Exactly. There's really two conditions. Whenever you're asking yourself or asking if someone else is addicted to something, there are always two rules. The first one is, can you go without it? Can you just decide, hey, today I'm not going to play any video games, and you won't suffer as a result. Like, you'll be able to go through your day just fine, and then you can wake up the next day and be like, okay, I will play video games today, but it's not what makes or break your life. And the other thing is whether it's adversely affecting your life and other goals that you have. So you could be playing 4 hours of video games every day, as long as you're also doing everything else, as long as you're still able to maintain friendships, have a relationship with your significant other and your family and your children if you have them. You're able to have a job and support yourself and take care of your health. If you're doing all of that while playing 4 hours of video games, I wouldn't say it's an addiction. On the other hand, if you're playing only 3 hours of video games every day, but you're doing it at a time when you can't afford to, like for whatever reason your life is so hectic right now that 3 hours of video gaming means that you're not able to do your job right, or you're not able to maintain your relationship, but you still can't stop playing, that would mean you are addicted, even though you're spending less actual time playing.
Yeah. And plus, there are people in your life that care about you too. So, sometimes the attention needs to shift and be not in the pixelated part of your planet.
Exactly. For me, it's always a priority thing. It's obviously, I've dedicated a lot of my life to talking and thinking about video games and how they can improve your life. But the one condition I always have is that, real life is always first priority, and video games are a way to make your real life better or to have fun and have that add to the fun of your real life. But if video games are ever first priority, then I think that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially like you were saying, when you have people that care about you and you can't give them time because you're playing.
Yeah. And the other thing that I every once in a while have to go pet my dog. Like, my dog is cute. Like, come on. Who doesn't love a 50-pound, husky dog, just adorable in the face? Like, I have to go pet him sometimes. I have 2 cats, they need to eat.
Oh, I'm jealous. I'm petless at the moment.
Yeah, we have 2 cats. We have Bella, which is a black and white short hair cat, and then we have Buttons, which is a part of her first litter that she had, and then we have Brando, which is this big pit bull. He gained some weight since we got him. Wonderful dog, love him, but he follows my dad and he follows my brother, so he prefers the guys in the house, and that's okay because he's so cute. But since we're talking about pets and Warcraft and real life and stuff, I remember before I came into CTR, we had a little poodle. We had him for 17 years. So we had him when I first started playing WoW. And when I first got on my first raid team, he would sit in my lap. And he was no more than a few inches tall. And he was 6.5 pounds. And he was my raiding buddy. And he knew when I was raiding. There was one time where he put his paws up on the desk. And he was barking at the boss and all the sounds. And I was like, That was in High Mall, actually. He was barking at Ore Gorger. He didn't like the sounds that it made. And I'm like, I have to turn off the sound so I don't disrupt him.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're making me really want to get some pets, but I'm renting a room, so I'm not really able to have a pet right now.
Aww. Well, I'll send you a picture of Brando and Buttons and Bella, and they can be your, like, picture pet-esque pet. Like, and I'll give them pets for you and I'll, like, rub their ears and everything for you in the morning before I jump into WoW.
Thanks, please do. We're actually, my girlfriend and I were already planning in the future, like when we have our own house, like we've already picked out exactly the dog we want and the color and all that.
That's adorable. So what dog are you going to get?
A red border collie.
They are beautiful.
Yeah, and it's like perfect for both of us because it's fluffy and it's a dog you can cuddle with, which she likes because, she likes to read a lot and write, and so it can, like, cuddle with her while she's doing that. But it's also athletic enough that I can go running with it and go hiking with it and all that. It's a very versatile dog.
Yeah. Now I'm starting to read about border collies. Yeah, they're known for herding livestock, especially sheep. Very intelligent and obedient. So.
Yeah, they're also very energetic, apparently, which is great because I always have too much energy too, and I have to, like, run all the time. So having a dog like that would be great.
Yeah, it would. One little tidbit that I remember about border collies is that they sometimes get confused with Welsh sheepdog or sheepdogs, so because they're very, very similar looking dogs. So
yeah, I've heard that. But it's great, actually. One of our friends, she just got a border collie puppy, and it's red. It's the exact kind we wanted. So we're basically like, I don't know, in 5 years or whenever it starts to have puppies, then we'll just adopt one of the puppies because hopefully we'll have our own place by then.
Yeah, I know. That would be so cool. And then we get to see Everett's puppy in the Discord channels and on the blog.
Oh, for sure. Whenever that day comes, I'll definitely blog about it all the time.
Aw, that's so cute. And then whenever we get border collies or a doggy in Warcraft, I'll make sure to name one of my battle pets after your dog.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we haven't even talked about what we're going to name it. Probably after a writer, because we're both obsessed with all the classic writers. It'll probably end up being named Hemingway or something.
Well, because Hemingway is awesome.
That's true.
I think I tossed you a Hemingway quote in Discord one day. Can't remember what it was at the moment.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Oh well. But I'm sure that we'll be quoting it all the time once you get your dog.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've definitely brought it way off topic again, though. I can't even remember where we were.
So let's reel this back in. We basically said, hey, you can't disassociate from life just because you're playing the video game. Whatever it is.
Yeah. Video games and self-improvement. Step 1, get a border collie.
Step 2, hug your friend's dog and do your job.
Step 3, look up a bunch of Hemingway quotes because he's smart.
Yep.
Okay, I think we nailed it.
And step 4, never under any circumstance touch Zeph's coffee.
Or feed her after midnight.
Because she may just turn into a dragon, and that would be bad.
That does happen.
Yeah, Zephirah hasn't made it there yet, but I'm sure there will be an episode. Cough.
Shh, spoilers.
Shh, spoilers. Bumhoffer, you better start running, man.
Anyway, if we actually want to reel it back for real.
Yes.
So we did talk a little about it before the show. I was actually saying in the beginning, like, my whole journey with video games and self-improvement started when I was about 12 or 13. And the reason for that is there's actually an essay I read. It's in a book called World of Warcraft and Philosophy, if that tells you anything about what kind of kid I was. But yeah, so I sent you the essay. I think you skimmed it. You seemed to get the gist of it. So If you'd like, I can break it down a little, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yes, please.
So, the essay, which is called A Meaningless World of Warcraft by Luke Cuddy in the volume World of Warcraft and Philosophy. It's really old at this point, but you can probably still find it if you're interested. The gist of the essay is basically how a lot of people play World of Warcraft all different ways, and people disagree on what's the point of World of Warcraft, if there is a point. For a lot of people, it's like, okay, you quest, you level up to next level, and then you raid, and end game is like, quote, beating the game of Warcraft is beating whatever the top tier current raid is. So theoretically, that makes the most sense, but in practice, the majority of people don't actually play that way. Like, actual mythic raiders are a very small percentage of the game. So when you realize that a lot of people, they spend their time in WoW just exploring or socializing or role-playing or making out their own stories with their characters, it kind of makes you wonder, well, what is the point of World of Warcraft? Which can be dangerous, because when you look at it too hard, you kind of realize, well, there isn't really a point of World of Warcraft when you think of it. The rules aren't really clearly defined, and if you start doing your own thing, then, what is the point? Which is kind of ironic, because, as we mentioned before, a lot of people start playing games like World of Warcraft in the first place because they're kind of struggling to find meaning in life, and so it's a kind of escapism. So the essay kind of breaks this down into a series of 5 steps that a gamer can take. The first one is that you realize that life is meaningless. Not everyone does, but a lot of people, especially intelligent people who think about philosophy too much, kind of come to this conclusion, nothing is inherently meaningful, so what do I do in life? Or nihilism, as most people know it, a phase that all first-year philosophy students in university end up going through. So you do that, and then you start playing a game like World of Warcraft, and you enter something the essay describes as a magic circle, which is basically when you agree to a set of, even if they're arbitrary rules, when you agree to a set of rules that kind of give meaning to whatever is inside of the magic circle. The example in the essay is golf. If your objective is to get the ball into a hole in golf, the most efficient way to do that is to just pick up the ball and go and drop it in the hole. But of course, you can't do that in golf. When you're inside the, quote, magic circle of golf, you're not allowed to do that, and that's what gives the game meaning. So World of Warcraft has its own magic circle when you accept that, completing quests and killing monsters and going on raids and all this stuff is meaningful, and so that gives you meaning and purpose until you start playing in these new ways and you start breaking the arbitrary rules, and you realize, World of Warcraft isn't actually meaningful after all. So at that point, you dissolve Warcraft's magic circle. And then you're right back where you started. You're like, real life is meaningless, and so is World of Warcraft. So that's step 3. But some people are able to get to step 4, which is where you kind of affirm Warcraft's meaning, even though it's inherently meaningless. You decide on your own meaning. You decide, the point is to role play, or the point is to explore, or the point is just to socialize with my guild. Whatever your own meaning is that you come up with, you can decide that that's meaningful, even though the game itself doesn't explicitly tell you that's what you're supposed to be doing. And at that point, you're affirming your existence inside the World of Warcraft, and you're creating your character essentially as a work of art, because in art, meaning is always subjective. So you're basically creating your experience in the game as your own work of art that is meaningful to you, even if the meaning is arbitrary and personal. So some people get to that step, but a very rare amount of people get to step 5, which is actually taking that lesson, stepping out of the game of World of Warcraft and applying that lesson to real life and saying, I'm going to affirm the meaning I create in life, even if you accept that life inherently has no meaning. You create your own, and you say, even if it's arbitrary and personal, I'm going to make this my meaning, and that makes life meaningful for me. And at that point, you actually start to create yourself as a work of art. And so that kind of gives life meaning, and that gives you a goal, which is to essentially, and this is an idea that actually comes from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. A lot of people are probably familiar with him. So his idea is basically you create yourself as a work of art, and you try to be the best and most beautiful piece of art that you can be. And that ensures that life will always be meaningful, and you always have a goal to work toward.
Yeah. And just because it's unique and specific to you, it may be different for someone else. And as you were talking, I did a real quick research sort of to see what a number was. And from a post on MMO Champion from April of 2016. There's some sources that says in here that only 15% of the WoW population clears raids on a mythic level.
Wow.
And that's, full clear of those bosses. So, not that for me is important, but competitive gaming is important for some people, and they really do make money off of that, and they're working towards that end goal with sometimes upwards of 20, 25 people. So that's a lot of teamwork.
Right, and it's not to say that people who do play the game that way that it's not meaningful. The idea is the game can also be meaningful for the other 85% of people who have never played a Mythic raid.
And as a good side step to this too, is that what Blizzard is going to be doing for raiding in Battle for Azeroth is that they're having a top 100, and once Mythic is unlocked by, I think they said 200 guilds on a mythic level, that's when it'll open up cross realm for everyone else. And I like that idea. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the number that was set as a prerequisite, but I like that idea.
Yeah, I've heard people talking about it. It's not something that applies to me, obviously, because it's been a long time since I've raided, and I honestly don't know if I'll ever be playing at that level again. But yeah, it's an interesting concept.
So, with thinking about that, I'm sort of like, it takes away some of the exclusivity of mythic raiding too. So I know a lot of people will be like, well, you cleared it Horde side, let's come and clear it Alliance side. And not everybody wants to do that and switch and not be the other faction.
Well, that's because Horde is the best faction.
Horde at heart, Alliance in the veins. You'll never get to change my mind there, Eric. So, and plus, I follow the Kieran tour, and technically, Zeph I consider factionless.
Will always be Horde.
Now, my tour and Moo cows, they love the Horde. They love the Horde. They will. They're Sylvanas followers. So.
Yeah, I was so proud of my girlfriend. When we first started playing, I explained all the races and factions to her and tried to remain as neutral as I could to let her make her own decision. And I let her decide what we would play, and she immediately said Forsaken.
That's cool.
And then yeah, she's fairly recently started playing, but really getting into the Horde thing and really hating the Alliance. It was handy because the big conflict with the Forsaken is against the Worgen. Forsaken and Worgen hate each other.
Yep.
And so, for background, listeners might not know this. I live in Mexico, and she is Mexican, born and raised here. And when we got to the Worgen, and I was explaining the history for her, and I'm like, oh yeah, well basically the king, he built a big wall to keep everyone else out because he didn't want other people in his kingdom. And being Mexican, obviously, she doesn't like Trump and his whole idea to build a wall to keep her people out. So yeah, it was a very easy segue into hating the Alliance.
So would she ever be friends with a wannabe gnome / halfling that just so happens to be an elf right now? Probably not. She probably would be like, why are you playing with that filthy Alliance person in your D&D group? Ew.
Well, are you talking about your D&D character, or?
Zeph. Yeah, I'm talking about Zeph.
Oh, not Zephirah. Okay. So I was going to say, Zephirah is a halfling, but they're not Alliance in D&D. But anyway. No, she's like me. That we get really into it in the game. We get really into Horde pride and hate the Alliance. But then obviously out of game, we're all just players, and it doesn't matter at all.
I guess I'll just continue to follow Dadgar. But yeah, that's cool. It's lovely to hear that your girlfriend is having a great time with it.
Yeah, and it kind of brings it back to the essay I was talking about. I used to raid. We were we were a guild that we were all in high school, so we did the best we could. But even with the very limited playtime, we were almost like cutting edge progression, and that was a while ago. Um, wow, it actually I didn't realize how long it was. It was like 6 years ago when I was in high school. But yeah, now like I said, I'm playing a level 40 character with my girlfriend. We're just going through questing, and to a lot of people would say like, "Oh, you're not even playing the game. Like you're just questing through the Western Plague Lands. You're not raiding." But I'm having way more fun in the game right now than I've ever had before, just because I'm creating my own meaningful experience. Like discovering the story and exploring with my girlfriend is way more meaningful to me than raiding ever was. And that's not anything against people who raid. I know a lot of people love raiding, but it just goes to show how like different people can make completely different meanings and completely different fun within this game. Which is the point. It is like literally a world of Warcraft with a world of things to do.
Yeah, there's various levels of things to do. Like I know this last expansion I did a metric ton of world quests until I got tired of those. I did old raids. I did a little bit of PvP. I did sort of everything. And all of it was fun in its own.
Did you do fishing? I know that's a really divisive one, but I'm one of the weirdos who loves fishing.
I usually save that for the end of the expansion race. So that's the one thing that I'm going to do in a little bit. So August before the 14th, about a month before that, I'm going to just do all the fishing on my tunes and be caught up. I do that every expansion.
I think it kind of goes back to the fact that I'm obsessed with Hemingway and he's my favorite writer. So whenever I go fishing in Warcraft, I feel like Hemingway.
Well, maybe one day we'll sit down and fish and talk, and you can have your nifty fishing pole, and I'll just have my little wooden one, and we can, I don't know, quote Hemingway.
Yeah, exactly. But getting back on topic a little, I guess what are your thoughts on the essay? Like the whole idea of, creating your own meaning in World of Warcraft and then stepping back and creating your own meaning in life and sort of creating yourself as a work of art or the same way you would create a video game character.
This is more broad for me. Just because I find meaning in, and like it could be my sunglasses sitting next to me. It could be, whatever it is. Just because I enjoy it doesn't mean someone else does. So, and because they have their own minds, they have their own souls, they have their own whatever it is that motivates them, I can still appreciate it. So some people like battle pets. Some people like to do the questing and the leveling. Some people are that in the 15% tile that do the mythic clears. And that is all okay to me. Like, I know where I don't sit. Like, I know I'm not a mythic raider. I mean, I was hardly a heroic raider this expansion, but I also raid one night a week. So I'm casual. So, and I'm a collector of things. I like you, the story, creating another one on top of that, like Zeph's. And I think by extension, I like where we're going in D&D. Because even though there may be similarities between Zephirah as a priest in Warcraft and Zahara in Talengard, that makes me think, that makes me happy. Like, that's where my sweet spot is. Like, I want to collect everything and just be like, and have Zahara, hold the hand of Isabella and, not turn into this hulking whatever it is that she's going to possibly be, and not kill Tuttle or Willow. Like that's the thing.
Right. Yeah, basically what you're talking about is creating your own meaning with stories. Like, with Dungeons and Dragons, we're literally making all this stuff up and basically like kids do, we're playing pretend with each other, and it ends up being something, extraordinarily meaningful to us and something that can actually change us as people in real life.
And yeah, I know I talk about Zeph like she's not really a part of the Warcraft story. And she is. But I lace a lot of the Warcraft stuff, the history, into what she's doing is not just willy-nilly. Like it follows along with that, but it's unique to Zeph. Or as a playable character that someone can make, it's extremely her story. I have not heard anyone else have an RP story like Zeph's. Like they do like things and they're like, oh, we're here, so we're gonna do this. Or we're gonna go fight the Lich King. And this is what we did at that time. You know, Zeph is a little different and she's a weirdo and I love her. Embrace your strange. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly, and yeah, basically what you're saying, you created your own unique story within the game, which means you created your own unique meaning. Like, obviously, Warcraft is the springboard for it because all this is happening in the game, but at the same time, you created a story that is completely outside of Warcraft, and basically you created something that is meaningful to you, that the game inspired in you, but it wasn't actually part of the game.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does.
So, I mean, I can't speak for you. It might be something that you weren't even aware of at the time. Like, if you had never played World of Warcraft, would you have thought, I can just sit down and create this narrative that's really meaningful to me and teaches me a lot about myself? Like, I know I probably wouldn't have thought that. But then you play this game and you create it and you think it's part of the game, but then at some point you realize it actually is something that's coming from you and something you're defining for yourself.
Yeah, I don't know if I would ever had come to whatever that this is. Like what I've learned if I didn't have Warcraft or actively played Warcraft. Like I know that I've always had some sort of connection and enjoyed stories of, Yield Dragon, but I don't know if I would ever have been able to come up with a story like this. It sort of was strange talking about myself in the third person, so.
Right, but now you have, and obviously now you realize that that is a story you can create, and that is meaning that you can create and ideas that you can come up with, and even though it started in Warcraft, you can take it out of that. Like, obviously, you've taken it to Dungeons & Dragons now with a similar story in Secrets of Talengard. But, well, how do I say this? Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little. Basically, that's a story that you created in Warcraft, but now you can take it out of it and apply it to your life, even. Which is kind of the whole thing I'm getting at, and like with talking about the 5 steps in the essay. You start in Warcraft and you create these stories and you create this meaning, but then when you realize that they did come from you and you can take them out of the game, how do they change and reshape your life and add more meaning to your life? So I guess that would be my question to you. Do you think from the stories you've created in Warcraft and the meaning you've made, I guess, do you apply that to your real life in any way?
This is going to sound oddly specific.
Sounds perfect.
When I was... This is pre-Warcraft. The RTSs, vanilla, on up until I started playing. My dad had a friend that played, and his whole family would play. And, I seen a lot of those fights before I made a tangible character with my own account that I got to see as a third party, and I thought, that's cool. Like overall, that's cool. Specifically about Zephirah. Her whole name is Zephirah Zella, which means of the West Wind. So I sort of already knew that I enjoyed the lore going in and playing it. So that changed the dynamic of my thought approaching it and say, hey, how am I going to make this meaningful? What am I going to do? How? You're always questioning, how am I going to reach for whatever it is? And I decided, I do like the battle pets. I do like raiding. I do like doing the old content. I like leveling. I like it all. And that's more of the desire of what can I learn out of this? What story can I tell? And I think the biggest thing is just because, Zeph is of the West Wind and you think that she can float away, she really can't. She's always with you. And you are stronger than what you think. So go do it. Like you really need to give yourself enough credit.
That's deep.
And the other thing, and I don't know if any, like this was months ago, this was when I first started the blog. My real name, Andrea Jean, actually, if you translate it from French, it means loosely, by the grace of God, you'll be strong and brave. I don't think that I fit that mold very well, but I certainly try. And that's all you got to do in life is apply yourself and try.
That's great. I mean, my name means like the eternal ruler, which I don't think describes me at all because I'm not the king of anything, but
There's a song that I'll share with you later after the show.
it sounds ominous.
It is. But it's actually a song that my dad likes. So I'm sure that you'll love it.
Sweet. But yeah, that's cool though that like it sounds like you have learned things in gaming that you have applied to your life and has made your life better.
Definitely. Now I wish I could just learn how to be like a scientist and, cure like cancer and migraines. That would be awesome.
Well, maybe you can.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll donate my body to science. I don't mind.
I mean, maybe curing cancer is a little ambitious to start off. I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but you say you wish you were a scientist, but if you actually want to, like, what's stopping you?
Well, I don't know.
Because this would actually be a perfect example of what I'm talking about with kind of thinking like a video game. If you were playing a video game and the goal to beat the game was to become a scientist, then what would you have to do to beat that game?
I know that I'm not the best student. So that's the first issue. Problem. Yeah.
Right, but again, you can say put that in video game terms. Say in the game your goal is to become a scientist, but you're not the right class for that. Like you're not the student class, you're I don't know, the hyperactivity class. This sounds like a really stupid game, but just bear with it. So if you don't have and like I can relate to this, I'm not the best student either. So if you don't have the innate skills to be a student and learn science that way, is there other ways you can? Which I think in the current world there is. There's like Udemy and, there's lots of online learning ways where you can learn in a way that's more conducive to hyperactive people like us.
Yeah. And I think that's that's the biggest thing. And in the previous segment, I actually talked about a YouTube channel that's science-based that PBS sort of handles. It's okay. It's okay to be smart. Actually, that's taught me a lot too. So I tend to be sort of knee deep in that, like little snippets of things. I tend to grab onto, which is cool. Yeah. So that would be fun. Like maybe learn things that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you were really serious about that. That's just an example you threw out that I seized onto to illustrate the point. But basically, that's, in life, a lot of people will say things like that, like, oh, I wish this, but I could never do it. Once you play enough video games and you get into that mindset, you get into where you ask people, like, well, why? Like, why do you say I wish? Why not? I'm going to do it. Because when you're a gamer, you think like that. You break things into steps and be like, okay, this is my goal. So, I have to be a higher level to complete that goal. So how do I earn the experience points? In this case, the experience points to get to that level would be learning science. But
I mean, I know that sounds a little small on the grandiose scale of learning science and being a scientist, but that's a start.
Well,
you're learning things.
You have to start at level 1, right?
Exactly.
Like that was me when I was first getting into running and lifting weights and stuff. I was definitely like at level 0 at that, and a lot of people would be discouraged. Like I don't even know how to start, and I was at first. I thought of it as like, okay, I'm basically at level 0. I have no experience points. I literally just need to go start running, even if I can only run for 5 minutes at a time, or even if I can only lift 10-pound weights. Like I'm gaining XP, and eventually I'll get there.
That's awesome. Like I think you just broke my brain, and now I'm like, okay, how can I do this?
First, I'm sorry for breaking your brain, but I'm sure you've heard of it. Like a lot of people talk about it, but have you heard of gamification?
I'm sure I have.
It's Yeah, I mean, it's almost literally what it sounds like, and there are apps for it. I've thought of, I don't know, maybe one day I'll try to learn a little programming and make my own app because I basically have my own gamification system that I've been using for myself in real life, but haven't shared it with anyone. Basically, the idea of gamification is you literally make your life like an RPG or something. You say, I'm level 1, and to get to level 2, I need 100 experience points. And then you give yourself, like, I don't know, maybe for going to the gym, you get 10 experience points, or maybe for I don't know, going and buying groceries, you get 10 experience points, and just all the things that you need to do in your life. And then it works just like a video game. You go and do all those tasks, and then you get experience points, and you go up in levels, and you can decide to reward yourself. You can say, like, oh, I'll buy myself a chocolate bar when I reach level 2, or maybe I'll go on a vacation when I reach level 100. Like, yeah, literally turning life into a video game and motivating yourself to be productive.
Oh, there was an app that I had a while ago, and I can't remember the name of it.
Was it Life RPG, maybe? I know that was a popular one.
Maybe, but it gave you like bars like WoW and, the whole level up thing.
Yeah, there's Life RPG, Habitica, things like that. I mean, I've tried a lot of them. They're great for whatever reason. None of them's quite gelled with me, which is why I've kind of made my own. And it's not very efficient because I'm literally like recording it on paper and erasing and writing things in. But that's why I've thought about making my own app if I learn to program at some point, just because none of them have quite fit for me yet. But for sure, if you find one that works for you, like, that's a great way to just really quickly organize your life and motivate yourself.
I'm wondering if I can go and find that, because that was a pretty awesome app.
For sure. If you look up Life RPG and Habitica, I know those are the two most popular. And if they don't end up being the one you liked, then I'm sure that one will also pop up when you look for those. Or just search for, like, gamification app. That's the umbrella that they're all fall under.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking that up right now. Everybody else, yeah, you too. Look it up. Come on, let's do this together.
Sweet. No, I was just gonna say, I know a lot of them, they actually let you make, like, groups and guilds and type stuff. You could even have, like, a Zephirah's Adventure Life RPG group where you can, like, all see each other's stats and accomplishments and inspire each other and stuff like that.
Oh, I should get that set up then and put it on the blog. That would be cool.
Not to, like, put a bunch of work on your plate. I know I just kind of threw that out there and be like, hey, why don't you set up this complicated thing? But
yeah, that sounds cool. I like that.
yeah, like, self-improvement is always better when you have people doing it with you.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I'm really excited now, and I'm happy that we had the conversation.
Awesome, I'm glad. Yeah, so gamification and those apps, they're really great for small scale stuff. I guess I know we've already gone a little long, but if you don't mind, I do kind of have a story about an example of how, gaming and fantasy and stuff has changed my life in a big way.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Kind of larger scale, like, I guess how games have just changed my worldview and my values enough. So I think a part of this. The listeners obviously wouldn't know this. The reason I live in Mexico is, I guess it's about a year and 7 or 8 months ago at this point. I used to live in Vancouver in Canada. I was going to university there, studying English and literature and stuff like that. And I had a job. I was just working as a, like, delivery person. It wasn't anything huge or anything, but yeah, so I basically had all this stable life. And that's when I met my girlfriend. I was actually at, like, a writing convention type thing because we're both writers. And yeah, we almost immediately started going out, and within, like, weeks of meeting each other, she told me actually that her visa was running out and she had to move back to Mexico. And again, we'd only been together for like 2 weeks, but I basically immediately decided I was going with her. So to a lot of people, that would sound completely crazy, and a lot of people actually did tell me that was crazy and, like, no, you can't do this, and you're literally dropping out of university and quitting your job and throwing your entire life into chaos, and you have no savings and all this over a girl you just met, and this is crazy. And at other points in my life, I probably would have thought that too, like, no, this is just impossible. Like, I really wish I could do this because I really do like this girl and I really want to stay with her and it sounds like it would be fun, but it's just not a thing that I can possibly do. But since I've literally grown up all my life on fantasy and video games and novels, and it's always like this podcast is about adventure. I guess I don't have the traditional set of values. For me, even though it might sound crazy, adventure is pretty much my number one value in life on just a philosophical level. So it made total sense for me, and that's why I was able to make that crazy decision, because the value of adventure for me comes over the value of being in university or having that job or living a normal life or doing the normal thing that you're supposed to do, where you go to college and then get a job and then retire and yada yada yada. Since I had that value of adventure, it was just an immediate decision for me. It was like, yep, I'm going to go to Mexico and start a new life and be a freelance writer. And yeah, I mean, obviously it was difficult and there was a lot of things I had to learn. I also didn't know Spanish when I moved here. But yeah, I learned everything as I went. And just because I had that belief driving me that adventure is what's meaningful for me in my life and more meaningful than anything else, I was able to get through it. And now, getting close to 2 years later, it's all worked out great.
But, for the adventures that we both have been through up till this point, I would say those adventures were worth it, because now look at where we are.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. So I guess I would say that's the biggest impact that these things, like fantasy in general, whether it be books or games, has had on my life. It's just at some point I decided I wanted to have an adventure in real life, and then I did.
And I'm happy that because of the gaming and the adventure and life and the lessons that we've learned, we've got here. And I hope
yeah,
that
me too.
I hope that the adventure, even though it may be hard at times, is still awesome for everybody else. And don't forget that you're here for a reason. So
right, and adventures are never easy. I mean, that's another thing fantasy and games can teach you. Like, if adventures ever were easy, they'd be boring and we wouldn't care about them. So that's actually a really good way you can look at it when you're having struggles in life or something's really challenging. You think like, well, I don't know, think of Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or whatever, World of Warcraft. Think like, if this was what was happening in World of Warcraft, if this was easy, like, would anyone care? Like, this would be super boring. So you can actually be, it sounds really counterintuitive, but be happy that you're being challenged, because like, yes, this will make a really good story.
And one day we'll tell our kids and we'll be like, hey, back in my day. And then you can yell at the neighbor kids to get off your lawn.
Exactly.
I'd probably still be throwing glitter in the faces of everybody. So is there anything else that we can add to the conversation?
Well, I guess the obvious question, I've shared my adventure. What would you say is your biggest or most recent adventure in your life? If you'd like to share, you don't have to.
As of recently, I would say, oh geez, like there's so many little things, but right now it's just learning how to, be present and learning that even though that you are learning for you, that there's other people around you. And I think the biggest thing that's teaching me right now, and I've lately mentioned this to, like buddies in game or whatever, but the thing that taught me that the most is there's a league here of baseball of people that are either physically or mentally handicapped, and it's a league that says, hey, come play baseball, let's have fun, let's learn teamwork. And they don't ever complain. A lot of these kids don't. And, our youngest is 12, our oldest is 42. And they're great. And they teach me to be better. They don't realize that they teach me, but they do.
That's awesome. Sounds like a really good adventure.
I'm happy that they're with us, and all of those kids are my kids. So, yay. And they know it, and I love them.
Yeah, that's great. That's, I guess the best adventures are when you're actually doing something to help other people and make a real difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and on that note, I'm going to say, because my brother and sister are on the Nationals on that league, I hope the Nationals do well in baseball and, don't do it for yourselves because I know you're making millions of dollars. But come on, guys, do it for the kids. I know you can. So I'm here with Mr. Kevin.
How are you doing tonight?
Fantastic. So we're going to be doing a community spotlight. So we're just going to dive into the questions.
Fantastic. I've really been looking forward to this interview. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I've been looking forward to it too. So this is awesome.
Excellent.
So you've been a host for the Dark Moon Herald for about 6 years. What has been your favorite thing about hosting a podcast?
I would have to say the best part is just keeping myself accountable, inspired, and just engaged in the Warcraft community. It's something that if you don't actively pursue that kind of like communication and really interacting with people, it's something that can drop off and go by the wayside. I mean, I'm a guy, I'm not big on communication to begin with. But the great thing about a podcast is that it allows me to make those connections, meet the people in the community, stay active in the community. And honestly, the way I've set up my show is it keeps me humble. Every week I need to go on my show and tell thousands of people how much I suck at Warcraft. So it really does boil down to just a really fun and engaging thing to do.
Yeah, I should have had a few slideshow of sex submissions by now.
I think everybody, if you're being honest with yourself, has sideshow of sex submissions.
I also have some epic fail submissions too. They fall in the same category. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. When I initially started podcasting, I noticed that a lot of the other podcasts that were out there were very high and mighty, like we are the best at this game and that's why you should listen to us, kind of there. I'm like, well, I know for a fact I am not nearly the best at this game in any way, shape, or form. So let's, relate to other people by talking about ways that we've screwed up in game and just get a good laugh about it.
Oh, yeah. And that sort of brings back a memory. And I thank Draven for this one. When I first started playing 2 months before Kata, I ran into an NPC, thought it was a player, and started to roleplay.
Nice.
So
that's awesome.
I was there for about 5 minutes before another player whispered me and said, that's just like a robo person, right? Like you're not going to get what you want out of it. I'm like, who says I'm not?
Said, yeah, I know. I'm practicing, okay? Jeepers.
Right? With doing some research, and even before you told me this morning, I'm like, I think I messed up the first question. It's actually been a little bit longer than 6 years. So you did another podcast before Dark Moon Herald. What helped you transition from that podcast into the Dark Moon Herald?
That was a transition by force. It was kind of like being laid off from one job that incentivized a career change to another one. I was doing the Powwow podcast where we put the pow in WoW podcasting. And me and at the time, my best friend Joe, we've been doing the Powwow podcast for about a year. We were just starting to plan our 1 year anniversary show, and we had a falling out. And I continued with the Powwow podcast, and then Joe told me, like, hey, this was something we did together. I honestly find it disrespectful that you would continue recording under the Powwow name without me, because, we're kind of 50-50 partners on that one. It's half mine, stop. So I said, okay, fine. And so that's when I knuckled down, and I got together with my other good friend, Kelp Keeper Walsh, who's been on the Darkmoon Herald several times. And we kind of came up with the idea of the Darkmoon Herald because of that, because I was so passionate about wanting to continue to podcast. I was having such a great time doing it. I didn't want to stop. And so the Darkmoon Herald was really a way for me to branch out, continue, and then take all the mistakes and kind of like stumbling blocks that you come across when you first start a podcast, and kind of treat Powwow as a trial run, almost like a Darkmoon Herald beta. Like, let's throw stuff out there, see what works, and then just try to do it better with the Darkmoon Herald.
Yeah. Well, this is episode 8 for me, so hopefully I don't have to drop the name, but I hope I make it to a year. That would be cool.
Oh, absolutely. If you have the passion for it, you can definitely make it. It's one of those things that you have to have that drive within yourself and the desire to want to podcast. If you talk to most podcasters, even the large ones like Pat Crane and Scott Johnson, they would continue to podcast whether they had, their thousands of listeners or 100 listeners. It's truly an act of love. It's kind of like an artist on, who loves to paint. They're going to paint whether people buy their paintings or not.
Talking about art and other podcasts and things, what is some of your favorite WoW community content that you enjoyed following, whether podcasts or blogs or videos, or that really nice painting that you really want on your wall?
Well, as far as artists go, I am a huge fan of Frenoni and Fabelina. Two very different art styles in their approach to Warcraft, but man, they knock it out of the park when it comes to their art. So if any of your listeners haven't checked out Frenoni or Fabelina's art, please do so. My Twitter icon is actually by Fabelina. So that's the kind of work that she does. Fantastic artist. Other than actual like artwork, the video streamers that I love to watch is Preacher on YouTube. He does so many great deep dives into the development of the game and class balance and how to play characters. Now that I'm up to 13 alts all at max level, it's really hard to, keep up with the Joneses, if you will, about, every little aspect and nuance of the class. So I often go to his guides in order to learn how to play this entire expansion. I haven't even touched Guardian Druid. Let me head over to Preacher's channel and learn how to bear tank. And then for news wise, I love watching Belluar Gaming. He does a great job breaking down the news. And then for the in-depth, like, I want to know everything that's going on with Warcraft, the Wowhead Weekly podcast with Perculia. And they just changed up their, it's and a color. It's fuchsia, like any fuchsia or something like that. They're awesome at just breaking down every aspect of the news. And other podcasts, I feel like I'm just going down a shout out lineup. Is Hearthcast and Horde for Life are two of my absolute favorite Warcraft podcasts. I just hope Horde for Life comes back.
Yeah, I remember them. That was, besides Scott's stuff, that was one of the first ones that I listened to.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you wanted to listen to a podcaster that was passionate about the game, I mean, just like all in, both feet, like just love the game. If you go back and listen to the very first several episodes of Horde for Life, where Rich Fisher was doing the episodes just by himself, like, oh, that's when I got hooked. I'm like, I love this podcast, and I love listening to Rich Fisher talk about Warcraft. And then he brought on Dustin Turley, who is like a hardcore Alliance player, and it really gave an awesome dynamic to that show. So, huge fan of Horde for Life.
So, do you have any advice for someone that would be getting into creating fan-made content like a podcast or art or blogging, music, or whatever it is?
First off, if you are thinking about doing this and it's something that you just can't get off your mind, then it's probably something that you're called to do. So just do it. And especially if it's like a podcast or a video stream or something like that, it doesn't take a lot of money in order to get this thing going. And so there's free programs, there's free recording software, editing software. It's all out there if you put forth the effort. And so if you have that passion, if you have something that you can talk about, absolutely jump into it. The big suggestion besides just do it, so more on a practical application standpoint, is you need to look at what is out there in the Warcraft or Blizzard or nerd community, whatever that you want to do, and ask yourself what is not there that you can provide. Like there's a lot of shows that cover the news. There's a lot of shows that, do PvP or tanking and stuff like that. But what could be your niche? Why should people dial into your show? And that's kind of how you get your start, is give the audience something that they can't get anywhere else. And then once you kind of have them hook, line, and sinker, then you can, go into the news, and people start caring about what are you doing in game, and your thoughts and opinions on things.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge reason why I started this adventure, you would say.
Absolutely. It's because I honestly started as a blogger, because I was like, I'm not comfortable going into that whole, podcasting realm. There's too much technical stuff behind it. And so me and my friend Joe, we started a Warcraft blog, and nobody read it because we didn't provide anything that was different. It wasn't until we actually buckled down and started doing the podcast and looked at what are all the other podcasts doing. Okay, what can we do differently? And what can we provide to the community that they can't get somewhere else? And that's when we started getting that traction and getting that listener base and the feedback and all that wonderful stuff that we thrive on.
That's awesome. So can you tell us how you found WoW and what kept you playing?
Absolutely. I was what got me into Warcraft was my brother. He started playing Warcraft way before me, and he just absolutely loved it. And at the time, I was playing Guild Wars Guild Wars, because I hated the idea of a subscription model. I thought that was the stupidest thing ever. Why would you pay for a game and then pay to continue to play it? This is just silly. And so he actually invited me to join him in Warcraft several times. I'm like, I don't like Warcraft. I don't want to pay a subscription. I don't like Warcraft as it is. I like StarCraft. If you make a universe of StarCraft or whatever, then cool, I'll pay for that. But I didn't like the RTS games for Warcraft. I'm like, so it's silly. Why would I go into Warcraft? And so for my birthday, I believe, my brother bought me a copy of Warcraft and a 6-month subscription and said, you have no excuse now. You will play it. And at that point, I was hooked. I started playing Warcraft, and I got all of my friends into it. And so we were all rolling together, and it was just so much fun. We got into this great leveling guild back when leveling guilds were a thing. And it was just so much fun that my life just was overtaken by it, much to my wife's chagrin. She's like, "You didn't used to play video games this much. What the hell?" I'm like, "I'm sorry. This game is amazing." So
So, talking about leveling and creation of tunes, what was your first character that you rolled, and which factors determined your faction choice at the time?
my very first tune was a Torn Druid named Divine Wrath, and because that was my gamer tag back then. And I thought that, like, oh, the druid, you're a shapeshifter, you can turn into a bear and a cat, and that's awesome, and you're kind of like a utility player. And my brother was Horde because he wanted to play on the underdog faction, so he invited me to play. So I'm going to play the Horde too, and so that's why I went with the Tauren. And I started questing in Mulgore, and I died maybe 20 or 30 times to the damn harpies that are there in Mulgore, and I almost rage quit the game. I'm like, this is stupid. Like, I can't get anywhere. This character sucks. I hate it so bad. And that night, I was reading. I had the Warcraft Player's Guide, and I was reading about the shaman, about how they buff everybody else around them, and how they enhanced everybody else's abilities. You could go melee or ranged or healing, and it's just really cool. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to start a troll shaman and see how that works out. And so I started a troll shaman named Old Scratch, and it was just gangbusters from there. I love the shaman to death, way more than the druid, and I've been playing Old Scratch for 12 years now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what is your most memorable moment in the game Warcraft, and why?
I would have to say there was back in Lich King, I led a raid group, and we were working on the assembly of iron in Ulduar. And I was tanking on my paladin at the time, and we were getting the job done, but people were slowly dying. And enough people were dying, and then we had enough that were still alive, and we were getting it. We were DPSing like crazy, and the but the enraged timer started ticking by, and so it's like your heart rate just starts pumping and pumping, and you get crazy, and the guys in the TeamSpeak channel were just start screaming and like doing a countdown, and I'm watching the percentage on the boss's health, and I'm like mashing buttons on my computer like crazy, and just like at the last second we got the kill, and everybody just went nuts in the channel. You would have thought that we killed the Lich King for the first time. Like, it was such a momentous and awesome victory. And I was so proud of my raid team and what we had accomplished up to that point. It's just always stuck out in my mind that that's kind of like that pinnacle adrenaline ecstasy feeling of a successful raid.
Yeah, I think everybody at least has one of those moments.
Yeah, there were others that came close, and there's a couple times in like PvP where you pull off a sweet kill, or you're exploring out in the world and you dismount yourself in an epic way. That's just always fun. But rare mountain drop and stuff like that. I mean, just today I got Ashes of Alar, so I'm still like geeking out about that, because God knows I've been trying since Burning Crusade to get that thing.
Yeah,
So
I remember when I got my ashes too, and I just heart fluttering and just like, oh my god, I got the pretty bird, I got the pretty bird.
yeah, it's so awesome when you get those little bouts of like, I've been working on this forever and I've finally achieved it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what has been your most memorable moment in real life due to Warcraft?
Well, I can give you two answers. One's kind of a cop out, and And the cop out answer would be meeting all of the wonderful people that I've interacted with at games at like BlizzCon, going to the first con before the storm, and being on panels and meeting people like Cuddles from the Game Case, and actually meeting in real life my soon-to-be co-host Apsana, and having her cuss me out because I made some derogatory line about the Alliance. And she was hardcore Alliance, so she just told me to F off right there on the sidewalk. And I said, you know what? I love this woman. I need to get her on a podcast. Um, so, so going and meeting and hanging out with friends and making friends through the game. I mean, those obviously are awesome things. But the one thing about this that happened outside the game was I had the honor and the opportunity to go up to, I believe it was in Pasadena, Blizzard had an art gallery that was open in Pasadena, and I got an invite to go up there and interview Chris Metzen about his art. And it was myself, my friend John Walsh, and Dustin Turley from the Horde for Life podcast. I kind of finagled us all into this interview. And so we got up there and sitting in an art gallery in an upper room, surrounded by these original prints by Chris Metzen that a lot of them never made it into the game. It was just concept art that he doodled on a piece of paper and pens and pencils, and just talking to him about the passion and the drive that he had for creating the entire universes in Blizzard was almost surreal. And the coolest part about it was the only thing that was missing from this table of just hanging out and laughing, and what was like a round of beers. That's the only thing that was. It was such an awesome down to earth hangout, and yet completely surreal experience. I don't think I'll ever forget the conversation that we had.
I don't know if I would have been able to talk. I would have looked at Chris and went back to the art and just looked and stared. Like I would have been that guy.
Oh, he is so charismatic. It is insane. And he's also very, very approachable. And thank goodness that this wasn't this wasn't actually my first time of meeting or speaking to Chris Metzen. He used to come down to San Diego Comic-Con like every year, and so I met him a couple times there. Because let me tell you this: the first time I met Christy Golden at Comic-Con, she was standing on the side of a panel waiting to talk about like the newest line or book or whatever that she wrote, and I just walked up to her, and I was a bumbling idiot, like just sweating and having trouble breathing, and I was just so in awe. Like, basically what you're saying is like I don't know what to say to you except how amazing you are, and can I take my picture with you? And she was so cool about it. She's like, it's okay, just take a breath, I'm here, don't worry, you can talk to me about whatever. And so thankfully I got all my bumbling idiots out before I actually had that particular interview.
I did the same thing when I met Vern, Mini-Me from the Awesome Power movies. I was like, because I'm just outside of Pittsburgh, and we here have the Steel City Con. So I was like, now, mind you, I'm not that much taller than Vern, but still, he felt larger than life to me. So I'm like, he could have been 12 feet tall, and I would have had the same reaction.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of people that have that effect, especially which until you actually meet them and talk to them, it's like they're such a force in your life, especially Christy Golden and Chris Metzen, who like at that point I dedicated like 6 years of my life just devouring everything that they would put out. To then just be able to stand there and shake their hand, it's crazy.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully, one year I'll make a duelist gun.
If you can do it, I would highly suggest it. I
Yeah,
have
and
a blast.
the first thing I have to do, because this has been recommended to me by like 5 separate people, is to find Ben Baumhofer and give him a hug. That is the first thing absolutely I must do. And we're playing a game in D&D together, so I think I at least owe him a hug and a thank you. So that's the thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Ben he's a fantastic guy. I've had a chance to talk to him at Calm Before the Storm. You know, we all get together and we all know each other, and yeah, he and the rest of his crew are just awesome.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's like, and then probably the second thing I'll do is like fist bump John and try to find a Ludra. I don't know, and just like say, "Hey, hon, you want a beer? Come on, let's go."
Yeah, I've had a couple people that, you know, like at the exact same time we're like, "Oh my God, it's you! I love you!" And they're like, "Jinx!" So
Right.
it's so much fun.
So since we're talking about our favorite people, what's been your favorite instance and boss fight and WoW?
I would say my favorite instance, and I actually just did an epic rap on my show about it, is the revised Naxxramas in Northrend. And I know it's kind of an odd answer, probably one that you don't get a lot. Um, but the tanking fights and Naxxramas is where I learned to tank and where I learned to raid lead, and so it kind of has that, like, this was my first love and my first passion. Um, and you know, developing a team and teaching the fights and learning how to tank, and some of the mechanics in there are just crucial. If you can tank the mechanics on every boss in Naxxramas, you can pretty much tank anything in the game. You just have to, you know, copy and paste what you know. So huge fan of Naxxramas. Very bummed that I never actually got to see it when it was a 40-man raid over the Eastern Plaguelands, because I didn't hit max level before Burning Crusade came out. But my favorite boss fight is by far Onyxia. And the reason that I love Onyxia is, one, to me, she is like the quintessential dragon fight. And I used to play Dungeons and Dragons, still love the game. And so anything involving a dungeon and a dragon gets 3 points in my book. So like Blackwing Lair, Blackwing Descent, heck yes, I'm all about it. And Onyxia, though, like, there's so many strategies that go into her particular fight that it's difficult until it's not. Once you learn it, it's you can get it on farm fairly quickly, and it's a nice, easy fight. But it's a huge, epic dragon fight, and you know, beyond that, you of course have the Onyxia wipe video, which is just amazing if you haven't seen it.
It is amazing, and I have that T-shirt.
Oh
And
yeah? Oh,
yeah, I
that's
do.
awesome.
I wore that shirt to work several times and got called a nerd for it and didn't care. So I would also assume that you sort of love Chromie for the same reason. Because, you know, female gnome, dragon, shapeshifts in the
Oh
dragon.
yeah, absolutely. Can you still hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yes, Chromie is by far one of my favorite characters, and I love the new Time Walking, The Many Lives of Chromie.
Yeah. And like you were saying, Dungeons and Dragons also, by extension, anything Dungeons, anything Dragons. I don't want to give my story away, but my running mates better be leery in the next episode or two in the Dungeons and Dragons game. Oh dear Lord, this is gonna be fun.
That's excellent. I ran with a dungeon master for about a year and a half. Sorry, side tangent, but we never saw a dragon and never went into a dungeon. And
Oh,
I'm
that
like,
is no fun.
this is not okay, dude. Like, that's it. And so then I took over DMing, and the whole thing was dragons and dungeons, just the whole time.
Oh, You know what? Maybe one of these days we'll reel you in. I have to talk to Everett though, so but he's gonna record the show with me tomorrow, so it's gonna be fun.
Awesome, yeah. D&D is something I haven't played since 3.5, but it's God, it's such a fun game to play. I kind of want to get my kids into it, but the wife thinks it's a little too geeky.
Oh, never too geeky. And if they're interested in they question it, sure, play a game. Or at least I would. So it's absolutely the funnest thing ever.
Absolutely.
So with the new expansion on its way, what are you looking forward to most in Battle for Azeroth?
I have to say it's the continuing storyline that I'm very, very excited about, especially with Christy Golden um, basically spearheading the whole thing, not just the novels to enhance the story and game, but now that she's part of that development team, looking at that cohesive storyline and really developing the world. I'm hoping that they're going to be bringing in, like new characters for new enemies and new heroes and new villains and all that stuff. Similar to what they did in Pandaria, like let's get some fresh blood up here in Warcraft. There's only so much we can talk about Anduin and Sylvanas. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to the PvP world changes, the war fronts. And the island expeditions is what they're called, whatever those things are called. The new scenario, the new randomly generated scenarios that we're going to be playing. Those sounds like a lot of fun. I'm very excited to try that.
Yeah, me too. In war mode too. That's the old PvP person in me. So yeah, you should run from Zeph, guys. Trust me.
Don't make me get my main.
Well, or don't let me get my main dragon. So, with the return of the factional divide in Battle for Azeroth, Horde or Alliance, or maybe neither?
This is a question that has been plaguing me, and I've been talking about it on the Darkmoon Herald quite a bit because I now have, like I said, I have 13 max level tunes, soon to have 14, and I almost have half and half Horde and Alliance, and I'm part of the Horde for Life Guild on the Horde side, and the CTR Guild on the Alliance side. It's really hard for me to actually pick which side I'm going to be playing. But what it really boils down to, in my heart of hearts, that is very much black. I am Horde. Deep down, I love the faction. It's all about strength and honor, blood and thunder. Looking around my office, I have several Horde symbols. I have a Horde banner on the back of my chair. At last BlizzCon, when Sylvanas just did her Banshee cry for the Horde, I had tears and I leapt out of my seat screaming. So yeah, moral of the story is, if I had to pick the side that I identify most with, it is most definitely the Horde.
And then I'm also struggling with the same sort of thing. But I've also always had a phrase, though, too, that's carried with me since the beginning of Pandaria. Horde at heart, Alliance in the Vans. And I'm following Dadgar. So that's been a thing for years.
It's nice when you can identify with a fairly neutral character. It's like, I follow Chromie. It's like, okay, fine, cop out answer. But I'm a huge Thrall fan. I'm a huge Bane fan. I was all about Vol'jin. Still am. Very sad. But and I definitely don't have the same passion for Sylvanas as, say, my co-host Kelpkeeper Walsh. He's like the herald of the Dark Lady. But when it comes to the Horde, I just feel that they kind of embody that that Klingon-esque idealism of strength and honor and perseverance, and a lot of time doing what's right even if it's not the best thing for them. And that was something that we definitely got from Orgrim Doomhammer and a lot of the history of the honorable orcs in the past. Is this may not be the best strategic answer, but it is the right one to make.
Absolutely. So, final question. Where can people find you on the internet?
It's very easy. All of the links and stuff are at darkmoonherald.com. But if you want, direct response, interactions, you can join our Discord under Dark Moon Herald. Find us on Twitter at Dark Moon Herald. Email the podcast at darkmoonherald.com, or my own personal account, if you just want to send me a direct message, is at Kevin Old Scratch.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everything, Ringmaster Kevin. It's been a really fun time, and may the Dark Lady forever watch over you.
Thank you. And Loktar Ogar.
Music used in this episode: Alchemist Tower, Alien Restaurant, and Division by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. My shoutouts for the week is Ringmaster Kevin, Navox, my illustrious DM of The Secrets of Talengard, which is now on iTunes, by the way, guys. You definitely should take a listen. I'm a noob, but I digress. But thank you, Rick, to Hailstorm, and everyone who has been keeping me entertained in the YouTube space. You're all awesome in your own ways. And until next time, I hope your adventure is awesome.